Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and Kyle Frost is back on the show. And he's here with some exciting news because he's no longer simply Kyle Frost, but he is in fact Mountain Gazette's Kyle Frost. Welcome back to the show, Kyle.
It is great to be back.
So tell us about last time we spoke to you. You weren't with Mountain Gazette, and now big announcement last week that you're writing for Mountain Gazette now.
Yeah, so here and there, I've been writing here and there for a couple years, on and off. And Mike Rogie, the founder and editor of Mountain Gazette, has been a longtime reader. And a couple weeks ago, he reached out, and basically the situation was he was getting a lot of text messages and emails every time that I wrote something. So not only does that feel good on my side, but for him, he just kind of brought up the potential of here and there joining Mountain Gazette, and we had a great conversation. And now I'm writing weekly for Mountain Gazette's subscriber base. So I am the lone digital black sheep. Mountain Gazette.
Yeah, right. Good point. On the giant print magazine. Yeah. No, I mean it's fun how these things work. I think this is very indicative of the outdoor space. You hear lots of stories like this of like, oh, I knew so and so saw something I did, whether it's at a brand or in media. And all the success definitely earned by you for putting in the time. I mean, it's why you're here. I subscribed to your newsletter. I'm like, hey, do you want to come on the show? Then it's like, hey, do you want to keep coming on the show? It's a great thing. Big things ahead for you, man.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. I really honestly think there's very few publications that I would have made this decision to work with. And, the Mountain Gazette audience, I feel like is pretty open to a lot of complexity and nuance, and occasionally being surprised when something is outdoor adjacent or not quite specifically in that lane. So I'm pretty excited to have a much larger audience and all the pressure that comes with that. So it's fun.
Well, your appearance today and going forward is brought to you by Mountain Gazette, the big twice annual print magazine. Head over to mountaingazette.com to subscribe today. If they want to continue to subscribe, any new subscribers to Here and There, I'll put the link to that in the show notes. Your first newsletter for the year was a little delayed as you were working out all the details, sounds like with Rogie and Mountain Gazette, but was regards to the reintroduction of wolves to the state of Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, so I wanted to start off with something that was, very tame and non-controversial and non-emotional. So I picked the extremely contentious topic of wolves in Colorado. And this issue kind of started 2018, 2019, when it actually hit the ballot to vote on the reintroduction of wolves to Colorado. And the kind of pro side of this is a lot of conservationists wanted to bridge the wolf habitat from Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, where they've already been reintroduced and been growing, and kind of the southern U.S. Colorado's been kind of a gap. There really haven't been wolves here since around the 1940s. There's been a little bit of migration from Wyoming in the last couple of years from packs there, and then in northern Colorado, but not like any significant populations. And obviously, on the other side of the debate is a lot of hunters, ranchers, and people that just don't think that we should be voting on these sorts of things. There's a pretty big urban-rural divide here that voting on this caused, where conservationists in the Front Range and Boulder and Denver and places like that voted heavily in favor of reintroduction. But obviously, like, wolf reintroduction is not going to affect anyone in Boulder or Denver. It's going to affect people in Grand County and Route and all of those sort of things that may actually feel the effects of wolf reintroduction in positive or negative ways. So long story short, like a really complex issue with some pretty emotional reactions on both sides. And I really tried my best to provide a measured take on, what the realities of reintroduction are and the realities of negative impacts and potential positive impacts.
Do they know why the migration isn't happening just naturally? Because I think they're starting to see signs even here in California of wolves starting to show up here, which I believe is from some of those reintroductions in other states. Like, what is is it just human barriers?
No, it is. I mean, it was happening naturally, which was part of the opinions against it, was that some people felt that we should have let it continue to happen naturally.
Right.
There were not a ton of sightings and in documented migration, but in the North Park region in Colorado, there were definitely wolves moving in from Wyoming. It would take longer.
So then, what's the argument for reintroduction? Like, is there really a good argument for You're smiling immediately.
I mean, yeah.
'Cause you-
Like if you want wolves back in Colorado and you think that they're a benefit to the ecosystem and the health of the ecosystem, it's really. I mean, this is really about supercharging the growth of wolves in Colorado. It's waiting 10 years to reach X level of population versus 15 or 20 or whatever it is.
It's sort of, I mean, your article did a great job of breaking down the conflicts and the criticisms that have arisen as a result. I mean, what are some of the things that can be learned from what they have learned in Idaho and Wyoming and Montana, where this has been going on for years? I mean, God, I remember hearing about wolf reintroduction like in the 90s, right? I think that's what you said even in your article, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in general, it's gone really positively. A lot of the perceived or anecdotal negative effects are pretty hard to back up in the data. Elk herds have continued to thrive, which is always a concern of the hunting community. And there are areas where the wolf population growth has affected ungulate herds, but it is a piece of the puzzle. Those areas are also areas where there's a lot of human impact and there may be disease. And a common one that people mention that I don't even think I brought up in the article is the wolves. The moose in Teton County have had a precipitous decline over the last 20 years. And a lot of people point to the wolves for that, but if you actually talk to any ecologists and wildlife biologists and things, not only did the decline start before the wolves were reintroduced, but there's just a lot of other factors with habitat loss and climate change and disease and that sort of thing that they're not positive what's doing it, but it's not just the wolves.
I mean, this is such a nuanced thing, and there's so many data points, and what humans, we're just so conditioned to be like, well, this is what I think, and it's like, if you need to change my mind, you need to have here's the point that's going to change my mind. I mean, you make a great point in your article that, look, all wildlife is tracked and managed at this point. Maybe not to the point where every animal is tagged and we know exactly where they go, but we understand behavior of herds and migration and where things are and what they're supposed to be. I would think if the moose population is declining, it'd be pretty obvious to tell this is because of the wolf reintroduction, right? I mean, it's a really, I imagine this is well, you said at the beginning, it's an incredibly complicated topic to sort of drive any real conclusions out of.
Yeah, absolutely. On both sides of the debate as well. They're not
totally right.
And I think the criticisms of a lot of the Front Range voters are pretty valid. Those voters are some of the least engaged on a day-to-day basis when it comes to conservation and activism and that sort of thing. Sure, you voted on it, but the people that live in the mountains are way more engaged with the state of our wildlife than you are. At the same time, those Front Range voters are some of the most disenfranchised when it comes to conservation issues because hunters and anglers and ranchers have an oversized impact in how maybe Colorado Parks and Wildlife makes decisions, which that's a challenging balance to strike there. But wolves aren't an ecological panacea. They're not going to solve everything. Like you said, we're not going to release them and everything's going to be amazing. We already have
it's just like it was 200 years ago now.
Yeah, we already have the largest elk herd in the country in Colorado. I read through a bunch of Colorado Parks and Wildlife reports on both ungulate and predator management, of which there's I don't know. There's like 23 regions in Colorado, and they do it for the elk, they do it for the bighorn sheep, they do it for the mountain lions, they do it for the wolves. It's a lot of reading, and it's really complicated. And I don't think most people realize that, are as much as we'd like to believe that we're going to reintroduce wolves and like it's this beautiful ecological system is going to be just kind of running on its own. The wildlife in the United States and the North American model is managed. Like we are
Right.
looking at the population of elk in every region, and we're looking at the ratio of males to females, and we're looking at the, birth success rate, and that's informing things like hunting rates, like how many, what
Right.
can
Right.
you hunt, how many permits are given out, like how does that tie into like maintaining a healthy population. And I talked to one researcher that had a really interesting perspective on this. That was, you know, we can wrap all of this stuff up in detailed scientific research that says X, that says Y.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, a lot of these decisions just come down to what's essentially a value-based judgment, which is like what is the right amount of elk? Like, what is the right amount of
Yeah,
mountain
and
lion?
how can we
Like,
even know? I mean, like they weren't keeping this detailed data in like 1862 or
yeah,
whatever, right? I mean, it just like it's got to be somewhat of a gut shot here, you
yeah.
know?
At some point, someone makes the decision that like there's too many like the elk are there's too many elk. They're coming down to lower elevations and messing up farms and getting too involved with humans. Like we're going to raise
Yeah.
the hunting permits a little bit next year. Or in the case of wolves, like oh they killed three cows this year. Is that acceptable? Is that too many? Like, is killing a couple dogs too many? Like, at some point, someone's going to be like, this is acceptable or this is not.
Well, that's kind of when I go back to the beginning question, and what I was thinking about or reading it because I don't know maybe it's just so many years working in sales and marketing. I just kind of try and find like the simplest line through why. And if it's even from a conservation point of view, even if you believe in your heart of hearts that like it really makes a difference introducing having wolves in the ecosystem is going to make things better, but it is kind of happening on its own. To your point, like those introductions in the Northern Rockies and Montana, everything are starting to bear fruit in other places. So
Yeah, and
really, all it seems like you're doing is inviting bad PR. And to your
there's
point too, what an interesting case study in terms of voting patterns. And typically, it's like, oh, here's the population centers; they vote more liberal. The rural areas are more conservative. When you're talking about public policy, it makes sense. Well, here you have all the control and basically an entire different ecosystem in the Front Range than what's up in the mountains. And if I'm living in the mountains, even if like my values align with someone in the Front Range, it still might be like, hey, easy down there, guys. Like you don't know what's going on up here.
yeah. I think it's unfortunate that divide has been created here.
Yeah.
And it's a challenging place for Colorado Parks and Wildlife to be because they initially issued guidance, I think back in 2016, that they weren't going to reintroduce forcibly reintroduce wolves. I've talked to a couple people, and I kind of have my own opinions on why, but like
Yeah.
they don't want to be political, and they've been forced to be kind of political by being the agency that's in charge of reintroduction. And predator management is expensive, and reintroduction is expensive, and there's a whole bureaucracy and people and time and all these kinds of things. Like whether or not you think it's a good idea for the wolves to be here or be reintroduced, like it's challenging for CPW. Like it makes their job a little bit harder.
Totally, yeah.
Um,
And what also, I don't know what the cost, but what else could that money have been spent on if this is sort of happening at a slower pace anyway? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
is there any real conclusion that can be drawn here? I mean, this is like the epitome of a time will tell situation. It sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. Like this is the wolves are here. They released 10 of them this year. And CPW is going to keep an eye on them. They're going to keep an eye on whether they encroach on wildlife, or if they changes elk populations, how fast the wolf population grows, if they're
Yeah.
killing livestock, if they're interacting with humans, which, I mean, I've talked to a lot of other people that just think this whole debate about the wolves is just kind of pointless because that's still a distraction from the fact that we are mostly the biggest problem.
Or what if like there's like some super crunchy like granola person from Netherlands who's out there like looking for the wolves right now? Like, oh, we're gonna take my children to go find
Oh,
the
for
wolves, and
sure.
then she gets hurt or the
Yeah.
kid gets eaten. Like that's.
Yeah, let's not hope it gets to that.
Do you have a gut right now that's like, was this even worth it? Like, do you think it was worth it?
I mean, I am supportive of wolf reintroduction in Colorado just because I think that it's usually worth doing some level of kind of reconstruction of habitat if we can to the stuff that we've screwed up and hunted wolves out of the state. Like they are
Yeah.
part of the ecosystem here. But I mean, I other than that, like we're just gonna have to see.
Well, the only other thing I wanted to talk about today is I've been dying to talk about it was per the OR Daily, Solo Brands. This is like last week or a week or two ago. I've not had a chance to talk with anybody about this, and I'm excited you're here to break this down with me. So, maker of Solar Stove and other brands, they announced they're changing CEOs in the wake of major marketing investments the company made, including the viral Snoop Dogg marketing campaign for Solo Stove, which I spoke to Chris Dickey, who's the PR guy who ran the messaging and media part of that campaign a few weeks ago here on the Rock Fight. The company hasn't resulted in substantial revenue increase as a result of those campaigns. The two campaigns really in question is the Snoop Dogg campaign for Solo Stove, and then they also sponsored a float and then Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. My knee jerk on this, and I got into a back and forth on Instagram with the guy who wrote the article. I felt bad because I wasn't calling him out, but I wrote that like this is a misleading headline because this guy was probably had to have been dead man walking. This is a brand marketing initiative. There's field marketing and then there's brand marketing, and you don't just have this ad or this float and then a few weeks later be like, well, that didn't work. This is totally about brand awareness, not about ringing the register. And it drives me a little crazy the way this continues to kind of crop up. Even in the last few weeks, people are glomming on with like, well, even if you make a big splash, it doesn't matter. It did matter, I feel like, to Solo. What was your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing the same kind of clickbaity LinkedIn things about, oh, like this is why you gotta like tailor your marketing to your consumer and that sort of stuff. And it's just a very convenient narrative, I think, that tied to such splashy marketing. I agree with you. There's no way that there haven't been undercurrents of sales trends or other things happening prior to the CEO leaving. One, you just don't turn around a CEO that fast. There were probably transition talks. There were probably CEO search stuff already kind of brewing before the Snoop stuff went out. And like you said, like you're not looking like 3 or 4 weeks later and being like, oh, like we didn't sell $100 million worth of Solo stoves because of the friggin' Snoop ad. That's just not how these things work.
Look, if you want to say that it was too much money, like, hey, we spent way too much on these marketing initiatives, and he was irresponsible in how managing whatever. There's a million ways to put it, but to say that it didn't get the result you were looking for. Now, you can make the case I've seen made is that this became more of an ad for Snoop than Solo Stove. Sure, you could say that, but it's like, that's a gamble I think anybody would take. Like right now, if Mountain Gazette or The Rock Fight could get Snoop Dogg on to say 3 words, we would say, yeah, all right. If half the people remember our brands over Snoop, that's a win. This is Snoop Dogg we're talking about. So yeah, it's a little too convenient. And then I guess but whatever, fine. It's a publicly traded company. These things happen. Transitions happen all the time. Well, the reason I kind of been holding on to this and wanting to talk about it is, like you said, the kind of junior marketers who are popping up on social media to kind of continue to use it as like to show the world they're smart by pointing out that, boy, Solo Stove got it wrong.
And it's like that. It's not just Solo Brands is not just Solo Stove. Like the market for a smokeless stove fire pit thing is only so big to begin with. Like there's Oru, they own Chubby's, they own Isle, like the Sups. I'm surprised they're putting this all on Solo. At least most of the stuff that I've seen.
Yeah.
I imagine that if you went a little deeper into how they've been talking about the brand or stuff that's been happening over the last 12 months, I imagine somewhere you would find stuff about declining sales or, I don't know, direct.
Yeah, or
versus
maybe he's not even paying attention to
trends.
other brands because he's out signing Snoop Dogg to
Yeah.
work with the stove, right? So
My main
totally.
problem is just like this whole like direct line of like, oh, Snoop
Me too.
bad, CEO fired. Like, it's not as simple as that. There's more. There's more here.
Brand marketing, you have to give time. It's brand awareness. You're talking about customer awareness, not field marketing, which is, this will result in sales at the register. That's not what this was.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Make sure everybody go and subscribe to Kyle's newsletter, and I guess we'll see you next week.
Yeah, that sounds good. Good to be back, and great to chat again.
All right, see you then. All right, that's the pod for today. But before you move on to that deep dive into episode 2 of True Detective, I need you to open up the podcast app where you're listening to this and give that follow button just a little old tap to subscribe to The Rock Fight. And then you can expect a special new subscriber gift to arrive by carrier pigeon within the hour. Thank you for becoming a new Rock Fight subscriber. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out is the most famous tour guide from the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas. It's Chris DeMakes. And he's going to play the Rock Fight fight song right now and just for you. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.